The Olympic Games are over, but can the NBA take a page from FIBA's rulebook? And Miami's preseason schedule is out, and we break it all down in today's episode of Locked On Heat.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your everyday podcast on the Miami Heat. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube, Odyssey, or your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. I'm Wes Goldberg, editor at allyoucanheat.com, here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members, and today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. We'll get to whether Erik Spoelstra should be the coach of Team USA going forward and what the NBA can learn from FIBA rules basketball in a minute, but let's start with the reveal of the Heat's preseason schedule. Preseason schedule was announced on Monday. The Heat will begin their preseason slate October 8th in Charlotte. Then they'll play 3 straight home games, October 10th against Atlanta, October 13th against New Orleans, October 15th against San Antonio, and then they'll finish up their 5-game preseason schedule October 18th in Memphis. David, what's your big takeaway from the preseason schedule?
Basketball is almost upon us. We're getting in. We're getting close to the season.
Only 2 months away.
Only 2 months away. Oh boy. Yeah, when you frame it that way, I guess. But no, I think it's a great opportunity. I'm personally looking forward to the preseason. I think you could always make a case that the preseason is pretty important, even for a well-established team, or maybe even a team that doesn't have a lot of roster turnover. But there are still going to be major questions that this group in particular has to answer, and I'm curious to see how we start to get news about that from training camp, how it all leads into the preseason, and to see what this roster looks like out on the floor, because I think that's going to be an interesting question. There's going to be different possibilities, permutations, combinations that Erik Spoelstra is going to be able to put out there on the floor in terms of incorporating some rookie personnel, maybe some other veterans, changes to the starting lineup. Plenty of time to get into that, but I think that's my biggest takeaway is just that I'm looking forward to the preseason, and you know what? We get to see some good teams, some good tests. We take that with a grain of salt, obviously, because the preseason, you rarely go full bore. You're not going to see a complete roster. You're not going to see extended minutes for any one player. But I still think it's going to be a good opportunity for this team to gain a little bit of experience and maybe build a little momentum rolling into the regular season and to kind of set a foundation for the rest of the season. That's what I'm looking at. I mean, aside from even the schedule, and maybe this is just a bigger picture kind of thing, like last year's preseason, and I know we'll talk about this a little bit more when it comes to Jimmy Butler and specifically his role, but there was such a hangover, and not a good one, but a really terrible, just like heavy, I just want to just drown my sorrows again all over just so I can erase the hangover kind of thing, because the Dame Lillard trade never was, never fulfilled. And then you kind of had Kyle Lowry saying he was going to be a starter. You weren't sure what was going to happen with his roster. And while there was some positive buzz after making it all the way to the NBA Finals, the preseason just felt like a real letdown. And I think particularly because of Jimmy Butler and the fact that he didn't play a single minute during the preseason. And that was just kind of like, it just felt like there was something wrong and off with the team from the very minute the season started. And I'm expecting a big change this time around.
I keep calling it the season that was over before it ever started. That's how last season felt like for the Miami Heat. And a big part of that was that Jimmy Butler, to your point, rested the entire preseason. This evidently after he had told Pat Riley, hey, I'm going to be more available and more engaged this regular season. And before the regular season even can start, he basically was taking time off. So the Heat went 2-3 in last year's preseason. Now, I know we're in the business of creating content, and we do have news in a rare time where we don't have much news in the way that a preseason schedule amounts to news. But it doesn't really matter who they're playing. I don't care who the opponent is. It could be the Boston Celtics 5 times in a row. It could be the Charlotte Hornets 5 times in a row. I don't really care who the opponent is if I'm the Miami Heat. Now, that said, there are some there's some fun teams on this list. Like the Atlanta Hawks with Trae Young, New Orleans with Zion Williamson, and now DeJounte Murray, San Antonio with Victor Wembanyama back here. The
Chris
Heat
Paul,
and
Harrison
Chris Paul,
Barnes.
great point. Memphis Grizzlies with John Morant back into the fold. That game obviously in Memphis, but some good star players on this schedule, I guess, would be my takeaway in terms of what the opponents are. To your point earlier, who knows if they will play, if they do play, how much they will play. Who really cares? My thing is, the Heat are going to be doing training camp in the Bahamas instead of Boca Raton. There is no failure of Damian Lillard hangover cast over this team. Perhaps there's another kind of hangover. Perhaps there's some other sort of cloud hovering over this team in the way of Jimmy Butler's unfulfilled contract, in the way of, hey, last year it just didn't go the way we had planned. We don't really have that spark coming off of the finals, even though that spark was dwindled a little bit by the failure to not get Damian Lillard last summer. But there is going to be I think this team is going to come back motivated. I think they're going to come back from the Bahamas probably feeling a little bit better than what they felt last year. No weird, like, who's our starting point guard. I feel like by the time training camp is done, this team will have a clearer sense of who it is versus last year coming out of training camp when it really didn't feel like they knew who this team was going to be. And so that should be something. But to your Jimmy Butler point, that to me is the biggest thing. When we start forecasting what this preseason is and what it could mean for the Miami Heat, I don't care if Khalil Ware is playing next to Bam Adebayo. I don't care if Terry Rozier is starting over Tyler Hero or they're both starting in the backcourt. I don't care if Duncan Robinson shoots 100% from three-point range. I don't care about any of that stuff as much as I care about, is Jimmy doing anything? Because it starts and stops with him.
How much do we need to see Jimmy Butler out there? Like, let's be realistic. Yeah, that's it. I think
more
that's
than last
a
year,
low,
which was zero. It's a low bar.
He needs to at least play. I would love to see him play in at least a couple games. And look, he's an older veteran.
It could just be the first half of half of these games. It could be the first half of all of these. One fourth quarter. I don't care. Give us a look at one closing lineup one time. I need Jimmy Butler sprinkles on top of my preseason. That's all I need.
I'm not reporting anything or anything. I don't think it's ever been confirmed. But it's just also my feeling is that game day came around last preseason, and Jimmy basically informed Erik Spoelstra and the Heat coaching staff that he wasn't playing, and that kind of hangs over the rest of the team. You know, You just don't. And there were other instances like that where you thought Jimmy was going to be available, and then all of a sudden Jimmy kind of just didn't feel like playing. And he certainly has that right. I get it, preservation for the whole season, but it connotes something that you don't want it to the rest of the team. Because like if you're looking to Jimmy as your leader and you're building off of a finals run and everything else like that, it kind of hangs in a way that it shouldn't. It's a dark cloud that kind of affects everybody else on this roster. And you've got
to your point too, and not to turn the whole preseason reveal into bashing Jimmy Butler, which
not at all.
I get accused of enough on this show. But
sure.
When Tyler, don't take our word for it. In other words, like when Tyler Hero and Bam Adebayo in January and February and March are being asked by the media what needs to happen, what needs to improve. This team loses 7 games in a row. What's going on? And you've got Tyler Hero, who is playing in every game that he's healthy for. And you've got Bam Adebayo playing every game that he's healthy for. And those two leaders
wasn't healthy for.
And those two leaders are saying the leaders on this team all need to be engaged and in lockstep in so many words.
Yeah.
And Tyler's saying that, and Bam is saying that. Yeah. It doesn't take that much of a leap of the imagination to figure out who it was that they were talking about. So again, we're not trying to turn preseason schedule into bash Jimmy Butler moment here, but it says something when the Heat players, the leaders themselves in that locker room are saying we needed more from Jimmy Butler, right?
It's a good
test. It did start at that preseason. It did start in the preseason. It was weird when it happened. This wasn't even revisionist. We were sitting here being like, so Jimmy's just not going to play in the preseason? Because even before, he used to play a little bit.
Right. And I think, again, a long finals run, you're looking at bigger picture. But, it just, you don't want it to start that way. And so I think it would go a long way towards him kind of repairing the bad vibes from last season, the fact that it ended as badly as it did, his whole fraction with Pat Riley and everything else like that. Like, if he can just go in there and be like, you know what, I'm going to play a couple of games, at least show my face out there, give that effort that I'm so used to giving, and I think it would buoy a lot of confidence. And I was going to say it earlier, but I think there's a lot of young, impressionable players on this roster too. Like you've got rookies, Khalil Ware and Pella Larson. You've got the two-way guys. You've got Jaime Jaquez, who is like, a building block. Nikola Jovic coming off an Olympic run. If Bam participated in the Olympics, for crying out loud, and if he's going to be playing, and he's going to be playing in the preseason, it just you have to be able to look to Jimmy for something, and it doesn't even need much. It's just
a warm up, just a little tune up. Like, hey, like let's just get out on the floor together. We haven't played together in a really long time. We haven't played in a playoff game since June of 2023 all together. Like, let's get something. Like, let's just spend some time on the court out in an environment against an opponent that's outside of a closed training camp in the Bahamas. And I think that just the preseason exists for a reason. We could debate whether or not it should, but it's out there as a little bit of a tune-up. And I just think that the Heat are not in a position where they could say, oh, we don't need any tune-up. Jimmy Butler's not in a position where he gets to say, I don't need a tune-up. No. This whole team, you just got gentlemanly swept by the Celtics in the first round of the playoffs. You need a tune-up. You need something there. All right, speaking of the schedule, did the schedule makers disrespect the Miami Heat? Plus, Erik Spoelstra is the rumored frontrunner to take over for Steve Kerr as coach of Team USA, but should he pass on the position? All of that and more coming up on Locked On Heat.
Today's episode is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your car alive, and eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers to roof racks, exhaust kits to LED headlights, and so much more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. And with over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. And because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. And eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. We'll be right back.
Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. For your second listen, enjoy the Locked On NBA podcast. There's no offseason in the NBA, and Locked On NBA provides daily basketball analysis from national and local experts in 30 minutes or less. No one keeps you as informed or entertained as Locked On NBA, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, Shams Charania is sort of slowly leaking the schedule release one game at a time, it appears, on Monday afternoon. And we have gotten some stuff. We've gotten some news. And it does not appear that the Miami Heat are playing in any sort of the big showcase games, any showcase days this season. They're not going to be playing on opening night. They are not featured on Christmas Day. They are not even going to be the Boston Celtics opponent on ring night, which I can't remember who reported it, where it came from, even how credible it was. Evidently not very credible, because there was some rumor online that the Celtics were going to host the Heat on ring night. Turns out it's going to be Celtics-Knicks, and the Knicks will be Boston's opponent when they receive their championship ring. So no major sort of highlights, at least for now, on the Miami Heat schedule. Now, of course, they're going to have some sort of nationally televised games. It'll be a handful of those. It'll probably be less than what it was last year when they were coming off of that finals run, and it should be less than it was coming off that finals run. But what do you make of no opening night, no Christmas Day, nothing really in the works right now in terms of what's being reported out there?
Totally deserved. Totally deserved. You fall flat on your face in the postseason. You don't duplicate a magical run. You don't make those changes to the roster that a lot of fans and maybe even some higher ups in the NBA want. And what do you expect? Like, this is a middling team that's shown to be a middling team over the last couple seasons in terms of their actual output. Now, whether or not they're better than what their record reflects, or whether or not they were able to, parlay what lack of success they had into a deep playoff run as they did 2 seasons ago, they haven't earned it. They haven't shown anything, and their games aren't sexy or interesting or fun in any way. Like, we've talked about this. You play in the mud, and guess what? It's not going to look
treated like
clean.
Mud.
Yeah, you're treated like mud. It's dirty and it's ugly, and nobody likes watching it, and that's fine. I mean, that's just, it's led to some success, but at the same time, when it comes to these kinds of accolades, they don't want these teams. Like, there are plenty of people who will criticize the teams that are going to be selected, even though they have marquee names and marquee storylines. What do the Heat have? Oh, are they going to incorporate a new 20-year-old rookie into the lineup? How many minutes is Khalil Ware, a mid-first round pick, going to get? Like, none of that is interesting in any way. Not a knock on Ware in any way. It's just,
No, it's
I mean,
in a
he's not,
national perspective. Nobody cares. Yeah. Nobody's
he's not
tuning in
Victor
to see Khalil
Wembanyama.
Ware.
Yeah,
It's not
exactly.
Victor
So,
Wembanyama.
is Jimmy going to play today? I mean, that's not
Right. That's the
exactly
other
the kind
part.
of story.
No,
Yeah.
to your point, the Miami Heat are boring. They're a boring team. They're boring to watch in the regular season, which is what we're talking about here. They're just boring. And boring teams don't get to be on national TV. Sorry. And look, the Miami Heat will be the first team to tell you, oh, we don't really care how many national TV games, but then they'll turn around and be like, we're disrespected. They don't care about us. That's what we're
absolutely.
on. Yeah. So they'll talk about the same thing from different sides of their mouth, but this is what it is, right? And the point you made before, had the Heat actually, like last year, they had a lot of national TV games. They obviously played the Sixers on Christmas Day, but you earn that when you go to the finals. You earn that when you do that. If you're in the finals, you get to play on Christmas. Like that's just, the Dallas Mavericks are playing on Christmas, even though they lost in the finals. Like that's what's going to happen.
Right.
You didn't accomplish squat last year, and your best player sometimes decides not to play when he doesn't feel like it. And you made nothing in the way of landmark acquisitions over the summer to draw eyeballs in, right? It'd be one thing if you had that last regular season the way it did, and then you went out and traded for X, Y, and Z, reshaped the roster, and now you had another star player that people wanted to see nationally. Nobody wants to see him. And by the way, I don't think that there's a Heat fan on earth that is surprised that they're not playing on Christmas, that is surprised that they're not playing on opening night. It's the Miami Heat, right? Like this isn't LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, and Chris Bosh anymore. This is Jimmy Butler sometimes and Bam Adebayo, and a team that, just like you said, plays in the mud, one of the slowest paces in the league, one of the lowest scoring totals when you combine their totals with their opponent in the league over the last several years. It's just not fun to watch. They're boring to watch. That has nothing to do with the quality of the play. It has nothing to do with how good the team is. They're just boring to watch.
I don't know if he's going to use this in his arsenal. I mean, aside from whatever Spoisms we always come up with and everything else like that, but I would love this if I was Erik Spoelstra. I would be like, you know what? You've deserved this. You've earned this, and not in a good way, because everybody it's an inconvenience in many levels, but at the same time, there's also a respect factor of being on Christmas Day, of being one of the marquee teams, etc. You want that respect, you have to go out and earn it, and I think that would be a huge motivating factor. And if Erik Spoelstra uses it correctly, it could certainly light a fire under their collective asses. I just don't know if he's going to. I don't know if that's how he operates necessarily, because they're grown men, they're professionals, etc. Like we've heard that before countless number of times. Everybody in that locker room knows exactly what's at stake here. It's like, okay, fine, but at the same time, maybe you could give them like kind of show them there are higher stakes involved here.
Well, to your point, I don't know that when they go to the Bahamas for training camp, I don't know that he's pulling up on a PowerPoint presentation what the schedule is and being like, hey, these are the Christmas Day games, and you're not on it because you weren't good enough. Like, I don't think that he's going to do that, but I do think that there is something to be said about, like, last year, were they resting on their laurels a little bit of that whole narrative of the Heat have proven that the regular season doesn't matter. It's all about the playoffs. And I think maybe they kind of, not even consciously, but maybe even subconsciously, just sort of, and look, there was injuries and all these kinds of things too.
Sure.
But maybe they did take the regular season a little bit for granted until it was too late, when they did try to make a push at the end, and then they all dropped like flies because of injuries. And so they don't have that luxury anymore, right? They don't have this sort of proof of concept to build off of in terms of, well, we were in the play-in tournament and then we went to the finals. Well, then you were in the play-in tournament and you won one playoff game. So you haven't done anything, right? Like in the what have you done for me lately kind of NBA that we live in. And so maybe they come in and say, yeah, we're not on any of these showcase games. We got a lot to prove for a team that's been together for the most part for 5 years. And to your point, yeah, good. Speaking of Erik Spoelstra, there is a report out there that Erik Spoelstra could be the front runner to be the next Team USA head coach. Joe Varden from The Athletic, in a story that he wrote on Monday, acknowledged that, yes, Steve Kerr has said that he's planning to step down after this year's Paris Games, and that Erik Spoelstra could be the next coach for Team USA. David, what do you think about that? Is that the right thing for Spo to do, or should he, like Steve Kerr, just say, I want a gold medal as a top assistant for his staff. I don't really need to be a part of these Olympics anymore going forward.
It's almost a moot point because, I mean, we know Spo. He's going to take that challenge. Like, this is the one thing he has not accomplished in terms of his NBA career. Like, he's coached championship games. He's done everything else. He's a Hall of Famer, top 10, 15 coach all time, wherever you have him ranked. And for him to be able to coach this collection of talent on an international stage, he's absolutely going to do it. I think there's a good point to be made that maybe he shouldn't, because who wants that aggravation? Like Steve Kerr, you can question whether or not he's a good coach, I suppose, but I mean, he was pulled over the coals based on his playing decisions and his, everything else like that. Right. So we're going to see as much hype as Spo got 2 seasons ago when he was able to take that group all the way to the NBA Finals, or let's lead that group to the NBA Finals. And there was a lot of buzz. There was a lot of buzz then. There was a lot of buzz during the Orlando bubble. There's just, I mean, for the past 5 years, I think a lot of people have been able to look at this kind of honestly mediocre group and the fact that they've achieved some success, especially in the postseason. And a lot of credit has gone to Erik Spoelstra, and I think that's fair. But I wonder whether or not this is just a lose-lose situation. Like you go into the Olympics, and again, I think he's going to take the job if he offered it. But I think he's going to go in there and if he wins gold, it's with that talented core, whatever that team might be, of course he's going to win gold. I told you he wasn't really that good a coach. You take away LeBron, and what has he done with his career? Absolutely nothing. Or if he loses gold, even Steve Kerr coached him the gold, and Steve Kerr didn't know what he was doing. He had his head up his ass the whole time. So, it's such a lose-lose for Erik Spoelstra and his legacy and his reputation. But at the same time, I think it's an interesting question, and I'm curious to see what he does. He's gonna take the job if it's offered to him, and I think it's gonna be interesting, especially in Los Angeles too. He doesn't have to travel that far, leave the family behind or anything like that. Take the family with. I mean, the kids were in Europe anyway. Like, he brought them to Paris, so I think he's gonna be. I think it's the opportunity to coach at home in Los Angeles. He's a West Coast kid. What's not to love?
Yeah, I see your point. I'm not sure I agree that it's a lose-lose. We'll take a quick break. We'll talk a little bit more about this and what the NBA can learn from FIBA after this. Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. If you're new to us on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. You can also follow us on your favorite podcast app. You mentioned that Erik Spoelstra taking the Team USA job would be a lose-lose. It is a little bit more of a high-stakes job than I think people give it credit for, right? Like, even for Steve Kerr this year, had he not gotten gold, you start questioning every decision that is made and all these things, and it's an abject failure, and you have more talent than everybody else in the world, and you ought to win gold. Winning the gold is the assumption, right? Doing anything less than winning gold is a bust. It's a complete failure. So you either win gold or you don't. That said, I do think that Steve Kerr leading this team to 2 gold medals now. 1 gold medal?
No, Tokyo was
2 gold medals. Yeah,
was Pop at Tokyo?
No, it was Popovich. It was Tokyo.
It's still Pop. Yeah, you're right. Pop coach.
So
Tokyo.
Getting this gold medal added to the resume for Steve Kerr, it is a big deal. And like, Steve Kerr might be the last person that needs more stuff on his resume. I mean, the guy's resume is pages long at this point.
He's fine.
He's fine. But it is something. And it's something that obviously he wanted to do. I think Erik Spoelstra getting a gold medal would just add to his legacy. Now, that doesn't mean he needs to do it, but that's not how these people operate, right? Like, they don't think about, do I need this added to my legacy or do I not? It's, I don't have this thing, I want to go get this thing. Because all these people, coaches, basketball, they're all crazy people, and they're all going to do whatever it is that they can do to get something that they don't have, which is why they're in the positions that there are. Whether you're LeBron James, Dwayne Wade, Kevin Durant, Steph Curry, Bam Adebayo, Erik Spoelstra, Steve Kerr, doesn't matter. They're all wired in that crazy, insane way. I do think it's a little weird. So I think there's something to be said. And by the way, for our purposes, it would be really cool. It was cool for him just to be an assistant. So for him to be the coach of this team would be great for our coverage purposes. I do wonder. I have no doubt that Erik Spoelstra can coach the team. I have no doubt that he has the utmost respect from his peers and the players. Like, there's zero doubt about that. I do kind of wonder about his handling of the media spotlight that comes with, because he can be affable and he's extremely intelligent and all these things when he wants to be. But if I just wonder how he would have handled what Steve Kerr had to deal with in terms of Jason Tatum with the DNP-CDs, the Joel Embiid questions earlier on in the Olympic run, and all these things. And Steve Kerr, we could debate who the better coach is and whatever. Warriors fans and Heat fans could debate that all day long if they want. But I don't think there's any doubt that Steve Kerr is the gold standard when it comes to handling the media, right? Like he is it's like him and Doc Rivers are the best at talking to the media, handling the media, and steering a conversation the way that they want to steer it.
Yes.
And I just wonder where Erik Spoelstra, when you're dealing with a very different kind of media circus, right? And he's obviously got a taste of that here with this experience over the last few years, but it's different. You're dealing with world media. You're not just dealing with your home media. You're dealing with national media. You're doing all the time in a way that he really hasn't had to do since the big three. And how would he have handled the Tatum stuff? I think that's a worthwhile question. Would he have gone untrained eye? Would he have gone like full tilt, sort of aggravated, annoyed head coach, or would he have handled it the way Steve Kerr handled it, which I think for the record was the right way to handle it, at least in front of the media?
I don't think he would have done the same thing in the first place. Like I think he would have tried to do a better job of balancing those minutes, just because like Tatum didn't need to go over. Like, I mean, as much joy as it might bring a lot of Heat fans, and I certainly understand that. Like, I don't think he needed to just like sit him out and give him a DNP CD. Like, there were times there, even in a 40-minute game, where Tyrese Halliburton should have played, could have played, and it wouldn't necessarily have been detrimental to the USA success. But I just think like to shut him down so completely and so frequently too. And we've talked about it before. I mean, they had LeBron James, they had Kevin Durant, Devin Booker was playing great. Like they had enough scoring that was complementary and balanced enough where it makes sense why they didn't play Jason Tatum or Tyrese Halliburton. But at the same time, like you try to find that balance. I think he would have just been honest about it. I think he would have been honest with them, first of all, and been like, look, I'm going to try to do my best to play everybody. There might be opportunities where I don't play you. And I think he would have given a full answer, because playing time, like to Spoelstra's credit, after everything he's gone through during his tenure as a Heat coach, like you have rarely had a lot of players grumble about playing time. There certainly have been some, but
and that's part of the communication behind the scenes. It's a good point. Yes. And by the way, when he does kind of make a questionable playing time decision, he always says, yeah, I kind of screwed up on that. I kind of screwed up, and I just I forgot. So yeah, maybe that's true or not. Maybe he didn't screw up. Maybe he never planned to play that player in the first place or whatever it was. But like outwardly, he kind of just takes it on the chin and takes it. So you're right. I think if he takes it, if he's offered it, I agree with you. He'll most likely take it. You never really know what's going to happen, but he'll 99% chance he takes it. And I'll do a great job. And yeah, I think it's something to be said about doing it too.
You don't think though that my point about like if he doesn't win a gold, like that people are going to use that as another indicator?
No, I think we're so far past that. I really do. I mean, that's 10 years ago now that LeBron last played for the Heat. I mean,
yeah, how many rings have they won since? How many rings?
I think most people are past it. Like if you're still being like LeBron, Spo's never done anything outside of LeBron, you're living under a rock, and you're not the kind of NBA person that I feel with engaging with. You know,
I'm already expecting a large Bostonian accented group saying, "Well, Joe Mazzulla's actually won a championship recently. He should be coaching, especially if they have two, maybe even three."
Put him on the staff.
Oh.
Speaking of Olympic basketball, I think one thing that the more I think about this Olympic run, and man, it was so much fun. That Serbia semifinal was maybe the best Olympic basketball game I've ever watched. And that France final was great too. And I think what helped make both of those games so much fun was the pace of the final few minutes. If you think about that, very little substituting, very few timeouts called. And a big part of the reason why is because the FIBA rules are different than the NBA rules, where in the NBA, you're allowed to call a timeout basically whenever you want if you have possession. You're allowed to call a timeout whenever you want. You're allowed to call those timeouts or substitutions anytime you want. You're always going to get some sort of break and commercial. The free throws are given out pretty liberally, it feels like, in the NBA. And in FIBA, it's just different. So this is from an old piece from ESPN's True Hoop. Remember that?
Wow.
That's yes. And this Henry Abbott, and this resurfaced on Reddit, which is how I got the idea here. So this is why why FIBA feels so much more fun and so much more electric and fast paced at the end, is because it literally is faster. 2 minutes takes about 6 minutes in FIBA basketball when you consider all the breakages and stuff. 2 minutes in the NBA takes what, 15 minutes sometimes? It takes forever.
At least. Yeah.
So here are some of the rules.
Close enough.
I just read jokes on the screen. No timeouts while the ball is in play. Period. End of story. That's the biggest part of this. If the ball is in play, you're playing. No timeouts. You're falling out of bounds. Sorry, you're falling out of bounds. You can't call a timeout. You get trapped above the 3-point line. Sorry, buddy, no timeout in the last 2 minutes. You're just trapped. You got to find an out there, right? Like, imagine Steph Curry on that final shot against France. If he was able to call a timeout, I bet he probably does. He gets trapped with 2 French guys all over him. You probably call, every NBA player calls a timeout right there and re-enters the ball and tries again.
They're putting a one-armed heave at the buzzer or whatever.
And we got the greatest shot of Steph Curry's career, arguably, out of it. And so that much was awesome. You don't get a timeout if you don't have the ball, even when the play is stopped. So even like between possessions, either if you're not the team that is ruling on possession, then you don't get to call a timeout even during a dead ball. So that's huge too. So that means that it's harder to substitute and all those things. If the ball is dead after a foul or any reason for a dead ball, both teams can just sub right away. Boom, go ahead, sub, do it, get it done. Almost like it's quicker than it is in the NBA. It's kind of closer to like a line shift in the NHL where you're just like, get your guys in there on the dead ball. It's fine, just do it. What was the other one here? It's but you can call, if you don't have possession, you can call a timeout, but it won't be granted right away. It'll be granted on your next possession and dead ball. So, and then you can waive that timeout later on if you decide against it. So you're not able to call a timeout right away. You're only allowed to call a timeout, and that timeout is only triggered when there was a dead ball anyway. So you're not creating more like dead air situations, essentially. So a lot of rules there to speed up the end of the game. And David, I'm going to be honest, I do not see a reason why the NBA wouldn't immediately say, that is awesome, let's implement it right now. There is not a good reason. It eliminates that weird like offense for defense substituting pattern where like who cares? Get your best 5 two-way players on the court and let's play ball, right?
I'm just picturing Adam Silver. The NBA is such an important global product, and we want to always put together the best product possible. And as a result, we want to be able to allow for those stoppages of play because they allow coaches to manage these games more effectively. FIBA is all about the emotions of countries going versus countries and the nationalism and the fervor that's worked up. But the global product that is the NBA is about setting an example of the best basketball possible. It's not just about the emotion. It's about
what you're saying?
What?
Translation?
Yeah.
We're the NBA. We have a huge ego. We're not taking our signals from any other smaller league in the world. We don't care about FIBA. We're not taking our P's and Q's off of that. That's what it means, right? Like that's why. And number 2, we're not going to eliminate some valuable commercial breaks and advertisement revenue.
I didn't even think about that, but absolutely, yeah, that's right. How do you tell, whatever your partners are that you cannot advertise during the last 2 minutes?
Here's what you do. Just sponsor the last 2 minutes. Do the Taco Bell 2-minute drill. And it's just like the last 2 minutes.
Taco Bell 2-minute drill is trying to get to the bathroom in time. I don't know if you want that 2-minute drill. Find a different spot.
Taco Bell 2-minute drill is what happened to me 3 weekends ago. No, the eBay Motors 2-minute drill. Here, how about that? That's what we got to do.
I will say I love the goaltending. Like that should have been incorporated decades ago. Like that just would have been so much better. And I think that again makes the game more exciting. Because even you saw USA players going, "No, you can't touch the ball." It's like, yes, actually you can.
The goaltending rule is a great call. It's a great call.
Yeah, and I love the physicality too. Like there were like in the women's game and the men's game both, there were like plays that were just like they're mugging them out there as far as like taking the ball. How much would that help Miami with their kind of defensive presence? Like they'd be so much better if they were just allowed to be as physical. A lot of their opponents would argue that they're already allowed to be as physical as possible. But I mean, it would help that team so much. And it's just more fun, less whining. No, there was very little. Like I know that Noah Eagle was just kind of making that point over and over again about like, that players were complaining to the refs, and Dwayne was kind of chiming in the same way. But there was a lot, by and large, a lot less whining. You're going to still complain.
Well, the refs, I think part of it was that they didn't really speak the same language all the time.
Maybe.
For the English was the second language for a lot of their officials. But also the officials kind of have that air of the soccer refs who are like, you dare talk to me right now?
Yeah, don't talk to me, yeah.
Right, it's a different kind of relationship, for better or for worse. I do agree that we need to just bring the foul calls down in general, and I do think we started to see that at the end of last season in a very positive way. That had a very positive impact on the way casual fans view the NBA. My point about the last few minutes is that if a lot of NBA fans, a lot of people who will watch the NBA or tune into an NBA game won't tune in until fourth quarter anyway, because they basically say it doesn't matter until the fourth quarter. How many times have we heard that? And then you're ruining the fourth quarter. I would argue, if I'm an NBA fan, watch the first quarter. That's the fastest quarter. We kind of just get through it. It's the most entertaining. And then I'll just tell you the final score tomorrow. Tune into the podcast, right? We'll tell you what happened. But the fourth quarter is easily, for 95% of basketball games, the most boring, unwatchable part of the game. And it should be the opposite of that, right? It should be the most fun part. It should be where the drama is. And the NBA does everything that they can to take the drama, to suck the drama out of the last 2 minutes. They really do. And I would argue that whatever you're losing in advertising revenue during a timeout, whatever you're losing in the way of coaching strategy or players association gripes or whatever it might be, and who knows what the real reason is, ego, whatever, you are going to make so much more money if you just make the end of your ball game that much better in the long run, because more people will be more willing to tune in, because it's going to be exciting.
But people, honestly, like, they're already tuning in, and they just got that new TV.
No, I think a lot of people tune out. I think a lot of people, like, there's a stigma against the NBA that the last 2 minutes takes 20 minutes. That shouldn't be
no doubt about it. And they're still watching it, though. Like, that might be the only time that they actually watch, is they tune in for those last few minutes. It's like, oh, it doesn't really matter until the game's almost at the end anyway. I mean, we've heard that a number of times too. So I think it's exciting already as it is. I see your point that they could be making it more exciting, but I also see the faux Adam Silver argument. It's like, if you just take all those opportunities for coaches to get involved and change things, like how many sideline out of bounds plays will be removed because they can't allow
Get rid of them.
timeouts.
Who cares? It's the dorkiest NBA thing. That it's like Brad Stevens popularized this SLOB so hard that like NBA Twitter just loses their collective minds when somebody makes a back cut off of a sidelines out of bounds play.
What about Jimmy catching that? What about Jimmy catching that one in the Milwaukee Bucks game where he like wound up?
I'm not saying that there's never been a good moment. We could do like the what about anecdotal stuff until the sheep come home. But I want.
They're next to the cows. They're hanging out.
Is it the cows come home?
It's the cows come home. Yeah, sorry. You don't actually have to have grown up on a farm to know that expression. But yes, it's still the cows come home. But sure, the sheep too. Where are these bastards?
It's been a while since I screwed up an expression. It's been a while. That's a good place for us to end. Thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Like, comment, and subscribe until the cows come home. Follow us on your favorite podcast app.